Unless you just woke up from a long coma, you know that Baldur's Gate 3 is a masterpiece. The internet has been on fire because of it. The fans sing songs about its many virtues, other developers are bitching about how the game is setting unrealistic standards for RPGs, and the higher-ups at Larian Studios are watching it all with a smile on their face and a permanent erection in their pants. But what exactly got us here? Why is this game so influential? In this review I will try to address all of the various things Larian did right, starting with its approach to DRM. Baldur's Gate 3 can be bought on GOG.com, where it comes free of any DRM. You buy it, you own it, just like in the old days. You can even download the installer locally on your computer. Remember how we are constantly being told that if there isn't an invasive DRM on the games, we will all become pirates and developers will die of hunger? Well, let me just throw some numbers at you. The game's sales passed the 1 million mark on its 6th day of early access. Yes, that's 6 days after the incomplete early access was out. Currently, the game has been sold over 5.2 million times on Steam alone, and the numbers are still rising rapidly. On the 6th of August, the game cracked the top 10 all-time most concurrent players on Steam, claiming nearly 30% of all played time on that very day. Just imagine, 30% of all the time that was played on Steam was just this game. It sold so much that it literally broke Steam twice. During these times, so many people were trying to purchase the game that Steam started to spit out error messages for some of them. Many people were actually so impatient that they ended up switching to other platforms such as GOG in order to buy the game. So it's safe to say that Larian Studios aren't going to end up impoverished after releasing the game without any DRM. This goes to show once more that the claim about DRM being the only thing stopping everyone from screaming "Yar!" getting an eye patch and a parrot on their shoulder is absolute bullshit. This is of course a whole different conversation, but I'm making a habit of mentioning it whenever I can, since I strongly believe that DRM is just something that ends up punishing the paying customer and takes away our true ownership of any game we buy. But you know what Larian gained from the decision to not implement DRM, microtransactions, or any other anti-consumer practices? The respect and adoration of their customers. They've created fans. When every other studio is developing predatory strategies, Larian thought to themselves, you know what, let's not bite the hand that feeds us. Let's see if we can't make a lot of money by being fair and respectful to our customers and really doing our best to make a product we love and can be proud of. And not only did they decide to release the game without DRM, but they also sold us a complete product. As I've said before, no microtransactions, no missing content, which is to be bought as a day one DLC or any other nonsense like that. I remember a time when another studio did the same thing, CD Projekt Red. They won our hearts over with The Witcher 3 and showed that they respect the players. But that was when they were still a small studio. As soon as they grew in size, that corporate greed took over and we know what followed. The reason why I'm convinced that this will not happen with Larian is because they are already a major studio, but I digress. We've talked about how the developer made consumer-friendly choices in a world where everyone else tries to fuck us gamers as hard as they can. But all that would mean nothing if the game was bad. Before we discuss its strengths and weaknesses, let's first assess other developers' reactions to Baldur's Gate 3. Not long after the game came out and the fans started spreading the word, more and more devs began to comment on how this is an exception and people should not expect it to become the norm. And while the first comments came from smaller studios which couldn't realistically be expected to produce a game of such magnitude, soon larger devs chimed in and began crying about how this is not something that can be expected from everyone. As soon as we have studios like Blizzard, Ubisoft, and EA making similar statements, we know that Larian hit a nerve. After all, they know that this outlier is going to make their shitty practices look all the more unacceptable. It's easier to eat tasteless gruel if you've never had a truly tasty meal before, but as soon as you give the masses something better, they will be reminded of what good food is and start demanding better and better quality. And that's what's happening here. Baldur's Gate 3 is huge, and while the game world is divided in separate maps, the fact of the matter is that they're all interesting and enjoyable to explore. Visually, the game is a stunning achievement. The meticulously detailed environments, character models, and spell effects create a truly immersive experience. The use of the Divinity engine pays off, providing a dynamic world which reacts to your actions. From the eerie glow of a torchlit cave to the grandeur of a city like Baldur's Gate itself, the game's world design is nothing short of breathtaking. This comes at a high price, and most PCs will be forced to their knees if you crank up the graphics. The music features many memorable tracks and fits the game perfectly. The voice acting is fantastic, but I have to criticize criticize Larian for not giving our characters a voice. Everyone else is voice acted, but our protagonists are always silent. That's a shame since they do have plenty of lines recorded to which you can listen when talking to them if they are playing as your companions. I know this is already a massive game and recording all possible responses to all playable characters, plus one male and female custom one, is no small feat. But at the same time, it's not impossible nor outrageous to ask for. It was definitely something that was missing constantly while I was playing. The gameplay mechanics of Baldur's Gate 3 are a fusion of traditional RPG elements and Larian Studios' signature style. The turn-based combat system feels strategic and engaging with a wide array of spells, skills, and abilities that encourage creative approaches. The environmental interactions, such as setting oil spills on fire or pushing enemies off cliffs, add a layer of complexity into battles. This makes the game very challenging, and I found myself loading save states a bit too much, which at one point forced me to admit that my skills aren't sufficient, and I ended up lowering the difficulty of the game. The fact that we can save and load at any time, even during conversations, is a blessing and a curse. You see, everything in this game is based on dice rolls. This means that even if your character is bad at something, he or she can still pass a check with enough luck. Thus, loading a game state and trying again until you get the desired outcome is a valid tactic. Unfortunately, this is where the game's long loading times become most obvious. Another issue is that the game seems to force the character you have selected into conversations, and there is no way to switch to another who would be better at handling the problem at hand. For example, my mage Gale is great at persuasion and wisdom, which gives him a huge advantage in most speech checks. However, he is also the guy you will want at the back of the group if a fight starts. This means that either I have him in the front and any unexpected conversations are handled by him, but then if I get ambushed, he's the one in the front and gets destroyed, or I have someone else lead the group but be terrible at all conversations, many of which are unexpected. It would have been best to make it so that I can simply pick who speaks even if a conversation has started with another character. That would solve this problem entirely. I would be remiss if I did not mention the game's biggest strength, its flexibility. When it comes to the player's choices, you have almost absolute freedom. In most cases, the game accounts for all sorts of solutions to problems you might think of. It's truly remarkable. You can find solutions with violence, diplomacy, by casting animal speech and talking to some animals around, by using necromancy to question a recently deceased person, and many more. The game really lets you play in whatever way you want to, and it works really well. I honestly cannot remember a game that has ever offered the player as much freedom as Baldur's Gate 3 does. The narrative depth shines to even the smallest side quests. The game's writing and voice acting contribute to a rich atmosphere that draws players into its web of intrigue. Choices matter significantly, influencing character relationships, quests, and even the outcome of major story arcs. Dialogue options are diverse, catering to a variety of playstyles, whether you prefer diplomacy, intimidation, or deception. One point of critique is that there are some quests which must be done before others, otherwise you fail them. The game doesn't make that obvious enough, and that hurts if you are a completionist like me and missed them because you were distracted by some other stuff. When it comes to the story, I want to praise the fact that it was good, but above all, it kept me guessing until the end. Every time I spoke to someone, it made me question my alliances with everyone else. One moment you view someone as your enemy, then you speak to them, and now you wonder if your allies aren't manipulating you and if this guy or girl isn't actually the true friend. The drama's great, and the way our characters, and by extension we as the player, get manipulated is awesome. The companions in Baldur's Gate 3 are distinct, well-written characters, each with their own compelling backstories and motivations. Their personal quests intertwine with the main storyline, fostering a sense of attachment and investment. Interactions with companions influenced by our choices can lead to meaningful relationships or bitter conflicts. The ability to recruit characters from different races and classes also enhances replayability for us. As someone who has played and enjoyed previous Larian RPGs, I can see the way they have been getting better with each game. The loot you find is one of those more substantial improvements among many others. Unlike in the previous games, you can actually hope to constantly find better and more unique loot as you win battles or solve quests. It's just nice to survive a tough battle and be rewarded with more than just having lived to fight another day. Having said that, I would have liked the customization of outfits to be a bit better. Sadly, there is no way to wear one armor but make it look like another. You can either make the armor invisible and show special outfit clothes, or you just show the armor you have and that's it. It's not possible, for example, to wear one heavy armor but make it appear like another heavy armor. Lastly, I want to mention the multiplayer modes. This game supports even LAN, which is awesome since my wife and I have our PCs hooked up, and I can assure you we are not the only couple that does this at home. So Larian Studios, thank you for using a very nice technology which seems to be dying out for no reason whatsoever. Depending on how many people are playing, you can divide the characters you get to control. Unlike other games, Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't tether the players to each other. As long as you are exploring the same map, you can run around and do completely different things, even different quests. This, of course, would not be a great idea since you are splitting the content of the game in two, but hell, if you wanted to, you could. The only downside here is that you cannot romance each other, which sucks since my wife picked Shadowheart, who is definitely the hottest character in the game, and thus my mage had to settle for sex with everyone else. Even though the game has these small weak points, it's still amazing and puts pretty much all other RPGs to shame. As much as the other AAA devs moan and cry about it, Baldur's Gate 3 did set a new bar for what a AAA title should be. As a consequence, I can imagine that games will be compared to it for years to come. Larian Studios have proven that you can make tons of money by making a good product and without having to use dark patterns, shady scam boxes, season passes, or any kinds of microtransactions. So if you, dear viewer, haven't bought the game yet, please consider doing it, both because Larian deserve the money for a job well done, and also because the sales numbers increase and the other studios squirm even more as they do. With a bit of luck, we may be witnessing the beginning of a change. Am I too optimistic? Only time will tell. With that having been said, I want to thank you for watching Game Filter. Sorry for the long wait between videos, but this is one of those games which takes a long time to properly explore. Thank you for your patience. This is Nino signing out.